So as the standard format winds down, I find myself kind of just revisiting these sweet decks that I probably didn't play as much as maybe I should have, and trying to pick up like old decks that maybe got some new cards that maybe aren't tier 1 but are still pretty sweet. And for SCG Indie coming up this weekend, I don't know. I'm trying to like narrow down my deck choices, and I want to play something fun, something that I'll enjoy, definitely. But at the same time, Collected Company is probably the best card in Standard right now, and I've yet to play in an actual tournament with that card, so that's probably a mistake. So as of right now, I'm not sure what deck I'm going to play, but this is definitely on the list. A little Esper Tokens deck. I did a video with this deck, I think, after PT Battle, but Oath actually has some pretty sweet cards for this deck too. So we have some Reflector Mages, which is just kind of killing Standard, I guess. You know, card's obviously very, very powerful. Most people have creatures in their decks, and this is a pretty good way to punish them. Also, Eiley, Eternal Pilgrim, is pretty nice. You see this pop up in some Rally decks, and then there are some Mardu decks with like Hangerback Walkers and stuff, and this card is just like good on rate. It is a 2-mana, 2/3 Death Touch. Sure, fine. Also, if they're like killing your creatures, you can just gain life, or if you're in a tight racing situation, you can gain life. If you have Sorin and you end up over 30 life, okay, you start killing their stuff. So that's pretty sweet too. I like Eiley with things like Kolaghan's Command or Ojutai's Command, and I'm not playing either of those in this deck, but I do think it's just good enough to play on its own. And it's possible that with Eiley, you can probably play some Hangerback Walkers, but I've been pretty happy with the Seeker of the Ways so far because of the Painful Truths, but Hangerback Walker is not great right now, I think, mostly because of Reflector Mage, but also because of things like Silk Wrap and stuff. But Eiley kind of negates that. It makes it so you can just play a Hangerback on 2 and start kind of charging it up, and if they ever go to Mage it or whatever, fine, just cash it in, get 2 or 3 tokens, whatever, and just kind of move on with your life. And if they don't have it, you know, you can keep building it up, eventually build like an army of tokens, and especially with all the sort of Anthem effects in this deck, it's pretty nice. So I don't know, Seeker or Hangerback, either one would probably be fine. Other than that, new cards include Grasp of Darkness. This was not a card that, when I looked at the spoiler, I thought would fit in this deck just because the mana cost is really prohibitive, but it's actually pretty simple. So all you have to do is switch around the mana base a little bit, play an extra Sunken Hollow, and it's fine. It's not a thing that you end up casting on turn 2 a lot of the time, but you also don't necessarily need it on turn 2. I think it is a little bit better against Silk Wrap, especially when the format has a lot of Dromoka's commands in it, which the current one does. So Grasp has been pretty nice, and since we're moving a little bit heavier into black territory, we can also play something like Ruinous Path. So the removal in this deck is actually pretty nice. Grasp, Ruinous Path, Murderous Cut, and Reflector Mage I think counts there as well. Plus you have some Jaces to maybe flash back some removal spells. So one thing I will note is that this deck is not trying to kill everything. Like Mardu Green kind of is, Jeskai Black certainly is, and this deck is mostly just like, no, I'm just going to like pick off your one thing that's like really bugging me, you know? It's not really a big deal to try and kill all their stuff because this deck will eventually assemble a board position that not a lot of decks can effectively deal with things like Secure the Waste and Gideon just making a bunch of tokens. So you just want to kill basically the things that are bothering you, you know, the things that are stopping you from winning the game or the thing that is outright killing you. 2 Sorins. Having life gain in a deck with Painful Truths, obviously very important. Sorin pretty nice with all the random tokens and dirtily creatures, the Reflector Mage, Eileys, whatever. Gideon is one of the best cards in the deck, possibly the best card, and it might seem weird to only play 3 and not 4 because this card, it just makes this archetype, basically. But also, Gideon just does not match up well against all the Reflector Mages and Collected Companies in the format, so that's kind of a flaw with the deck in general, but I don't feel like those matchups are all that bad because they can't really deal with Secure the Waste or Wingmate Rock very well. But Gideon is definitely your weakest card there, especially when you're on the draw, so I am only playing 3. We have a couple Wingmate Rocks at the top end, and a Treasure Cruise to complement the 3 Painful Truths. Plus, there are a couple Transgress the Minds, which are kind of a nod to the company matchups, but mostly a nod towards ramp. So that's the main deck. Looks kind of like a hodgepodge of cards, but I think every card in the deck serves a purpose, and I can basically defend why every card is here, so that's good. As for the sideboard, I have a lot of stuff for Ramp and Collected Company because Ramp is kind of the scariest matchup for decks like these, even though it's not the most popular deck out there. But Collected Company is definitely very popular and very scary. So we have things like Languish. We have Kalitas, which, again, not great against Reflector Mage. But this deck also used to have like Silk Wrap Stasis Snare as its removal suite, which was not good with Kalitas. But now that we have Grasp and Ruinous Path, in addition to Murderous Cut, I think Kalitas is pretty nice. And then have a Dispel to stop Collected Company. Could also end up bringing in like a Disdainful Stroke against those decks if you want to. But for the most part, I'm going to be relying on things like Transgress the Mind, the one Dispel, and Languish to clear up the kind of like flooded board states that happen. And then hope to kill them with stuff like Wingmate Rock and Secure the Wastes. As for Ramp, Transgress the Mind, obviously very good. Duress 2. Disdainful Stroke to stop their big plays. Mostly Ugin. Ugin is the thing that you basically can't really come back from. Like, this deck goes wide enough that something like Ugin or maybe even Dragonlord, or not Ugin, I'm sorry, Ulamog, and even Dragonlord Atarka at times are not going to be enough to beat you. But Ugin certainly is, because it wipes your board, and then even if you have like the Ruinous Path or whatever, it's still really tough to come back from that because they get such a huge tempo swing out of it. So that's basically everything. The Silk Wraps are for very, very aggressive decks. I don't think that I would necessarily need them against the company decks, but we will see, I suppose. So, oh yeah, another Treasure Cruise for another card drawer for grindy matchups. But yeah, that's about it. Fourth Gideon could possibly be in the sideboard. I could totally see that. It would be a card that you would likely bring in on the play in most matchups, but I think Standard is super fast and volatile right now, and if you ever have an opening hand on the draw with two Gideons, it's kind of like, yeah, probably can't win, because none of my cards really do anything. So, yeah, that's it. Deck looks sweet. I've been having a lot of fun with it, and hopefully the video makes you want to try this deck, because this deck is great.